Okay. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashraf al-anbiya'i wal mursaleen wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. And continuing with our lesson, Islamic Parenting 101, our series, 5 responsibilities upon every parent. Inshallah ta'ala will kind of just continue going through. We'll start with number 2. Good morning to you guys. Good morning, cousin. How you doing? Okay, so we discussed in the last lesson, it is the parents' responsibility to teach their children good manners. We said that good manners or behavior of children are broken into 2 categories. There are behaviors that are intrinsic, that are innate, that are part of their, biological makeup. And those behaviors we don't necessarily have much control over. We can give them some guidelines. We can give them some rewards and, of course, punishments for those behaviors to kind of keep it within a certain boundary. But that child is pretty much who he or she is. There is no changing. There's no change in the child. All right, and then there are those what are called learned behaviors. These are behaviors that the child develops because of his or her environment, immediate environment, meaning in the home, as well as the parameters beyond the home. All right, these are the behaviors that we actually have control over, because the child is picking up things from us, learning from us. And as I said, that, our children is the way that our karma comes back to us. Our karma comes back to us through our children. Meaning, what you put out in the world will usually come back to you through your children. If it's good, then it's good. And if it's bad or otherwise, then you will be dealt with accordingly. We believe that. That's part of our religion. We believe that what you put out into the world comes back to you. And you don't necessarily need to be a Muslim to believe that. These are universal laws that pretty much every religion teaches. So it's not rooted necessarily in one particular or another. This is usually, laws, universal laws that people who are in touch with the world that they live in, the universe that they live in, knows that this is the way that the universe keeps its balance. All right? The universe keeps its balance through what you put out in the world comes back to you, this boomerang effect of our deeds. And I said that when we start to make sacrifices for God, then the reward and the compensation for those sacrifices will usually come back to us. And sometimes it will come back to us through our children. Just as our punishment sometimes comes back to us through our children, so does our reward. Sometimes you might have done something good, and God compensates you by way of giving you children that are well-behaved, children that will be the delight of your eye, meaning it's a metaphor for being pleased with these children. All right? This is how it comes back to you. And sometimes we put out negative in the world, and that comes back to us through our children. For women, who are abusive to men, you have to be careful that your karma doesn't come back to you through your children, through your male child. You have a son, and your son, pretty much, deals with you in a way where if you are smart enough to know, then you will know that the way that your son interacts with you is pretty much predicated on how you dealt with his father or other men that came into your life, and vice versa. All right? Men who mistreated women, especially if these men have daughters. I'm always amazed at men who mistreat women, and you have a ton of daughters. I'm just like, what part of that don't you understand? Like, I'm always amazed when I see men who mistreat women, disrespect women, objectify women, and then turn around and you got, 3, 4, 5 daughters of yourself, of your own. Like, you don't think that that's going to come back to you? Or you mistreat your wife and then you have a daughter, you don't think that that is going to come back to you? Wallah al-Azim, for sure, that's going to come back to you. Without a doubt, that's going to come back to you. No doubt. You disrespect your wife, you disrespect the mother of your children. You don't think that when you have daughters that at some point your daughters are going to give you the same thing that you gave their mother? The disrespect, right? You don't think that that's going to come back to you? Absolutely, it comes back. And I mentioned the example of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he began calling his father to Islam. And Prophet Abraham, he called his father to Islam. And the father did not want to embrace Islam, and as a matter of fact, began to show his enmity and hatred towards Prophet Ibrahim. And Allah says that, when Ibrahim distanced himself from his father, فَلَمَّا اعْتَزَلَهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ وَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. That when Ibrahim turned away from his father, here's the sacrifice. Here's the sacrifice. When Ibrahim turned away from his father and what they worshipped besides Allah, then we bestowed upon him Ishaq, Prophet Isaac, right? We bestowed upon Abraham Isaac. We gave him as a reward, as a compensation. Now, mind you, Ishaq was born when Ibrahim alayhi salam was 89 years old. And his wife was, very elderly as well. And Ismail as well, the second child of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. So you can see that these two children, Ismail and Ishaq, you can see that these two children were gifts to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, because usually no one has a child at 89. He had Ismail at 89 and Ishaq at 99. I mean, nobody has children at that late in their lives. So when Allah says that He gave, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ, we gave Ibrahim Ishaq as a gift, that was a compensation. Allah was compensating Ibrahim alayhi salam for the sacrifices that he made. Not to mention that Ibrahim alayhi salam left his wife and his children in the valley of Mecca with pretty much nothing, on a commandment from God. I mean, these were all sacrifices that Ibrahim alayhi salam made, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensated him well by giving him not just a child, a righteous child. All right, he said, وَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ. We gave him Ishaq, and we gave him Ya'qub, a grandson. So that means that the blessing that God gave Ibrahim for his sacrifices transcended one generation all the way up into the next. He said we gave him Ishaq and Ya'qub, meaning Allah's blessing, Allah's compensation for the sacrifices that he made transcended just one generation, and it went on into the next generation. SubhanAllah. I mean, can you imagine that you did something so profound in the sight of God that He not only blesses one generation of your children, but two generations of your children? Can you imagine? You've done something so profound in the sight of God that He not just compensates you for one generation, but your compensation transcends into the next generation. SubhanAllah al-Azim. I mean, just ponder on that for a minute, right? He said, we gave him Ishaq and Ya'qub. He said, وَكُلًّا جَعَلْنَا نَبِيًّا, and we made both of them prophets. We made both of them prophets. This is Islamic parenting 101. This is Islamic parenting. And as Muslims, as well as those who are not Muslim listening, who have some value system rooted in faith, all right, we have to understand that, becoming a parent or being a good parent and raising good children has a lot to do with our relationship with God. It has a lot to do with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not just some rule book that, academics produce and we use it as a manual and we follow this to the T. Oh, studies show that children do this. Studies show that children do that. Studies show that if you do this, then, okay, that's all theory, because that doesn't necessarily work on all children. That's theoretical. But what we do know is that a healthy relationship with God, a healthy relationship with a higher power, is definitely something that helps to rear children in the right way. No one can deny that. All right? And then someone can say, okay, well, what about the religious children who seem to go astray? All right, there's what is called preacher-child syndrome. All right, preacher-child syndrome. The preacher's child syndrome is that child who grew up under religious auspices, right? Their parents were pastors, preachers, teachers, imams. We see that in the church. We saw that in the church with many of our pastors and deacons, and, their children kind of didn't follow the same path. As a matter of fact, their children seemed to be almost the antithesis to what their parents were. Their parents were, right? Parents were diehard, super religious people, at least in our eyes anyway. And then lo and behold, their children ended up becoming almost the total opposite. As a matter of fact, children became worse, become almost like devils, right? It's like the more religious the parents are, the deeper into sin and evil their children go. And we've seen this. I mean, we've seen this in the Islamic community. We know imams who are prominent imams, well-spoken, great orators, great, researchers, mashallah, to the end of it. And many of their children are, the antithesis to Islam. They are the total opposite to Islam. So how does that happen? So we're talking about having, our values rooted in some type of religious doctrine, but yet we find religious people's children completely astray. How does that happen? All right, number one, that happens because either God is testing them. All right, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a punishment for the parent, but it's a test. Number two, you have to understand the preacher's child syndrome, that the more religious the parents are, the usually the opposite direction the children are going to run. All right, so religious parents have to be moderate in the way that they approach, religiosity in the home with their children. All right, when you are an imam, for example, let me just use Islam as the undertone for this discussion. I want you guys to pay close attention. When you are an imam, all right, you spend your entire life, or your entire life is devoted to Islam. All right, so then that means that you carry a certain energy with you in your home around your children. So you don't necessarily need to go as hard with your children as other parents do with their children, because there's a natural element of religiosity with you because of the position that you hold. You understand? So what might seem like 10 on the scale of religiosity with a normal parent, with an imam or a religious figure, 10 is like 20. You understand? It's over-exaggerated. It's over-exaggerated because you already carry an element of religiosity with you, and your children can feel all of that. It's very heavy. There's a lot of pressure on your children. Not only that, you're thinking about the peer pressure on the children, the communal pressure, the societal pressure on religious children or children who come from religious backgrounds to basically be like their parents. The trial of being born into a righteous family or a religious family is that the expectation for you as a child is that you are going to end up like your parents. And so you are basically living constantly in the shadow of your parents. Constantly living in the shadow of your parents. And you will never be able to have your own identity because you will always be identified through the persona of your parents. All right, we can see this clearly with the story of Maryam. All right, when she brung prophet Jesus, when she brung Jesus to her community and she wasn't married, what did her people say to her? They say, Ya ukhta Harun, ma kana abuki imra'a saw'in wa ma kanat ummuki baghiya. O daughter of Harun, O sister of Harun, that your mother wasn't known to be licentious or to be lewd and to mingle with men like this, nor was your father known to be like this. Your father wasn't promiscuous. Your mother wasn't licentious. How did you end up like this? How did you end up bringing forth a child and you're not married? They judged her. How did they judge her? They judged her based upon the persona of her parents. You see, the trial of being born into a religious family is that the expectation is that you're going to end up like your parents. And so some children just naturally decide, I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm going to create my own identity. And in trying to create their own identity, they actually end up leaving Islam or leaving whatever faith that family was rooted in. You follow me? So this is some of the reasons why the children of religious people or seemingly religious people seem to go in the opposite direction of their family. Here we're talking about teaching your children, which is, actually number 2, and how we segue into parenting number 2, which is teaching our children a sound or solid belief system. The question would be, well, then why is it that we see some people who are religious figures in our communities and their children are the total opposite of their parents? It happens all the time. Number one, it could either be because God is testing those parents with children that are, not necessarily on the same wavelength as the parents. Number 2, because naturally the preacher-child syndrome, and that's a real syndrome. That is a real syndrome. Preacher-child syndrome. Preacher's child syndrome, meaning when children are born to or raised in a house of religious figures, they usually go in the opposite direction, trying to create their own identity, but actually end up leaving the religion itself entirely. All right. Number 3 is, as the scholars say, أقل الناس استفادة من العالم أهله. The scholars in Islam, they have a saying that the people who benefit the least from the scholar is his own family. The people who benefit the least from the scholar is his own family. Why? Because the religious figure seems to be a religious figure to the community, but to his family, his children, he's just who he is. I'm not Shadid Muhammad in the home. Like, I'm just the father. I'm just the husband. Like, I'm not regarded as that. You know what I mean? The community sees me one way, and my family sees me totally different. You understand? So, while we say, okay, well, wow, he's the imam, but his children are off the hook. His children are not even religious because his children don't see him as the imam just like you do. You see him as the imam. You see him as this public figure, this huge icon in your eye. All right? You see him as that. But his children just see him as daddy. They don't see him any more than that. And I mean, that doesn't mean that they don't respect him, but that doesn't also mean necessarily that they want to follow in his footsteps. I don't impose on my children to follow in my footsteps. I don't. Because this wasn't something that I chose. You understand? Being an imam or being in a position where you're teaching Muslims their religion, learning Arabic and all of that, I didn't plan that. I couldn't have planned that. Nobody could plan a life like that. Nobody could plan going, spending years in prison and coming home and going to the Islamic university, graduating with a degree, knowing Arabic fluently, coming home and becoming a public figure. Nobody could plan that. Even if you planned that every single step of the way, there's no guarantee that your life would have followed that path, because we got to think about divine intervention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we plot and we plan, and Allah is the best of planners, right? So even if I planned my life out like this, there's no way that my life would have turned out like this had it not been for the divine intervention of God. I didn't plan this. So to be in this position that I'm in now, and then take this and superimpose it on my children with the hopes that those children are going to follow in my footsteps, I am tampering with divine intervention. I'm tampering with that. Yeah, we can give our children the basics that they need, but as far as prepping them to be an imam, that's something that God has to choose you for, I believe. For a person to be successful as an imam, as a leader in any faith-based community, I think they have to be chosen by God. I don't think a person can plan to be an imam or plan to be, I'm always amazed when students of knowledge, they email me or they message me or they reach out to any other student and they say, I want to come home and be an imam like you. Like, what do I have to do? And you're like, dude, just live your life, man. if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees it fit for you to go in this particular direction, Allah will make sure that you have all the resources that you need. You understand? God will make sure that you have all the resources that you need. Allah says in the Quran, there's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ حَيْثُ يَجْعَلُ رِسَالَتَهُ. Allah knows best where to place his message. God knows best where his message belongs. So if God selects you to do his work, better believe he will provide you with all of the resources you need to become successful and effective. You understand? God will make sure you have everything you need. You can't plan to be a religious leader. You can't plan for that. You have to let God decide that. You let him navigate. But you can't plan. You can't tell a student of knowledge, oh, do this, and you're going to become an effective imam, because he may follow your blueprint and may not end up necessarily with the same results. You understand? I can't give you my blueprint. My blueprint was for me. You understand? My blueprint was for me. My blueprint is not going to work for everybody else, because my blueprint was divinely designed. My blueprint was divinely designed, meaning I didn't design it. I didn't create it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it. I'm just carrying out the script. I'm just following the script. You understand? So I don't superimpose on my children to be, the next Shadeed Muhammad, or to be, an imam. I don't even want my children in this lane right here. I don't want my children in this lane right here. If this is something that they decide to do later on in their life, because you don't have a regular life. When you sign up for this, when you do the work of God, any other ambition or plans that you had in your life got to go on hold. You understand? This is a lifetime, this is a lifetime work here. This is not, I'm going to be an imam for a particular period of time, and I'm going to do this and for this, and then after I'm done, I'm going to go off and I'm going to go open a business. And you can do other things. That's not to say that when you are an imam, you can't do other things. I'm not just an imam. I'm an author. I'm a public speaker. I'm different things. But at the same token, the core of who and what I am is I'm doing the work of God. I'm doing the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that takes precedence over everything. That comes before everything. All right. So number 2, from the etiquettes of Islamic parenting, or from the things that the obligations upon every parent, is that you have to teach your children give your children a sound belief system. Our belief system. All right. And I'm not just talking about teaching them Aqidah 101. I'm so over that. I'm just so over this whole idea of giving children, teaching Islam in this very, robotic, type of fashion. It's like, oh, we need to go learn and study a book of Aqidah. And so basically what you're doing is you're teaching children who are functioning human beings, who have their life, right? We're basically giving them a system of beliefs, a list of beliefs, not a system. We're giving them a list of beliefs. You're supposed to believe in this. You're supposed to believe in this. You're supposed to believe in this. You have to believe in this. This is our belief in Islam, and you have to believe this. This is the way that Islam is taught to the Muslim community. I'm amazed. Like once, subhanAllah, I am amazed at how we have managed, and I mean, not necessarily amazed because I get it now. I understand it now. I understand why we keep talking about Aqidah, belief, core beliefs in Islam. I understand why we keep talking about Aqidah over and over and over and over again, teaching from this book and that book and this book and that book, and you still don't see any results. You don't see the fruits of those belief systems. You don't see the beliefs. You don't see the end result of it. You don't see with all of this Aqidah teaching, right? You don't see Muslims who are studying Aqidah on this level. You don't see Muslims. You don't see that Aqidah manifesting in their behavior, manifesting in the way that they interact with the world. And I'm going to tell you why. But I want you to put this image in your mind, because you have so many Muslim scholars, imams, that, we're going to teach this book on Aqidah and this book on Aqidah and this course or this class on Aqidah. And while that is good, great job. You're going to teach Aqidah. Great. How is that Aqidah going to manifest in their everyday life? How is that belief system going to manifest in the way that they interact with the world? How? That is the point that we're missing. So we're basically just teaching you a list of things that you're supposed to believe in. And then we threaten you when you don't believe in it correctly. Oh, you're supposed to believe. How do you tell somebody you're supposed to believe in this? That's not the way you teach people to believe in God. That's not the way you teach people to believe in God's system. You don't find the Prophet ﷺ teaching his companions or any of the Sahaba after them teaching their companions a belief system, right? We're talking about a belief system, right? Where it is actually forced on the person. And if you don't necessarily believe in that, right? If I was teaching you belief, I wouldn't have to force you to believe in it. You understand? It would automatically align with who you are and what you are and what you're doing in this world. It would automatically align. I wouldn't have to force you. Oh, if you disbelieve in this point, then you're a disbeliever. So basically you're threatening me that if I don't believe in Islam like this, then I'm somehow a heretic, I'm somehow a deviant, I'm somehow a disbeliever. How do you teach belief like that? Please tell me. I'm confused, man. Maybe that worked for second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation Islam. Maybe that worked for them. All right. But we live in a different time. We're dealing with a different set of circumstances and people. You understand? We're dealing with human beings. And when we read these narrations of the scholars of the past, of the Salaf, it's almost as if it's like, it's a computer designed system that we are given without any feelings, any emotion, any understanding, any sensitivity, nothing. And we're handed this form or this system, and we're told, teach it to other Muslims. You understand? Brainwashing. There you go. That's what we do. We brainwash people. You understand? You brainwash people. You sit in front of a Muslim community, right? And you say, this is the belief of Islam. And anyone who believes other than this is a deviant, a heretic, a kafir, a this, a that. And you come up with all of these different labels for what a person would be called if they don't necessarily believe like this. That is not the way that you teach belief to people. That is not the way that you teach someone, right? That's not the way that you teach somebody to believe in something that is a key component in their relationship with God as well as their relationship with the world. That's not, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't buy into that doctrine. I don't buy into that methodology of teaching people belief in Islam. So now that I'm saying that I disagree with that approach, then what is my approach and where do I get it from? Let's go and take a look at the Quran. Let's take a look at the Quran and let's take a look at how belief was taught to prophets and messengers and their children. Let's take a look at how belief in God and belief, a belief in how they should interact with the world, how it manifested. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, the check the box mentality. Thank you. It's like, okay, do I believe in Allah? Yep. Do I believe in Allah is above his throne? Yep. Do I believe this? Yep. Do I believe these are people are deviants? Yep. Do I believe this? Yep. You check all the boxes. And if you somehow miss a box, then you're somehow labeled as a heretic, as a deviant, as a kafir. All right. This is threatening me to believe like this. And if I hope you guys are paying attention, because this is where that cult mentality comes from. This is where the cult mentality comes from. That's not the way that you teach people to believe. So essentially what we've done, let me take it a step further. This is what we've done. We as Americans who live here in this country, who were raised a certain way, who were given certain values and certain beliefs and certain way to interact with the world and interact with people, right? This is our foundation. This is the way that we were raised. All right, and then we go overseas. All right, whether to Morocco, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, wherever. All right, we go overseas. And then we open ourselves up. We're very vulnerable because, especially African Americans, because we feel like we don't really know much. He's a sheikh. He's an Arab. He knows the religion. He knows more than I do. I'm just going to come, close my mind, and I'm going to take everything that this person tells me. All right? And we associate that with being a good student of knowledge. You're a good student of knowledge, meaning you sat at the feet of this scholar. You never challenged him on anything. You took every single thing that he gave you and you incorporated it within your life. You put it in, instituted it into your life, and then you return home to America. All right. Now keep in mind, Arabs, they have their culture, even scholars, just because they are a scholar of Islam does not take away from the fact that they had a certain upbringing. They had a certain cultural upbringing. All right. That does not, one has nothing to do with the other. You understand? Make no mistake about it. And there's no pun intended to scholars, but they're human beings. Understand? And they have their mothers and their fathers raised them a certain way. This whole idea that they were raised on Quran and Sunnah and all they knew their entire life was Quran. Come on, man. Come on. Let's be realistic. All right? They had the same cultural upbringing that we did. And never believe for 1 second that a person's cultural upbringing is not infused in the way that they teach. And Arabs in more particular, because Arabs, many of them cannot separate culture from religion. They don't. They cannot separate culture from religion because it is infused. It is infused. Even to the point that the Prophet ﷺ, even in dealing with the Arabs during his time, he had to let certain things slide because he understood that part of their cultural upbringing, they were not going to abandon it. He said, there are 3 things that my ummah, when he said my ummah, meaning he's talking about Arabs. He's talking about the people that he was sent to initially. He said, there are 3 things that my ummah will never abandon. And they are kufr. They are acts of disbelief. But my ummah, my people, will never stop doing them. You understand? 3 things that my community will never stop doing. And they are actually kufr. They are acts of disbelief. They are acts of major sin. At-ta'nu fil ansab. Insulting someone's lineage. Al-fakhru bil-hisab. Wal-ahsab. That is to brag about where you come from. Right? And I'm forgetting the third one. These things, the Prophet ﷺ knew that he would never change that about them. And although he addressed issues, all right, for the sake of addressing them, because he had to, that was his duty, that was his responsibility as a prophet. He said there was no prophet who came before me except that it was a duty upon him to direct his ummah, to direct his nation to every good he knew for them, and to redirect them away from every evil he knew, or warn them against every evil that he knew. All right? You understand? Let's be realistic about this. So this is telling us that Arabs have a very difficult time to separate their culture from religion. All right? And that includes many scholars that we love dearly and that we hold in high esteem. But at the same token, you cannot separate the person's culture from the way that they teach, from the way that they educate. So what we did essentially was to go overseas, put our brains on pause, go sit in front of this scholar or that scholar or multitude of scholars and receive all of what they gave us, including their own cultural traditions. And then we came back to America and we superimposed those beliefs on people here in America the same way that it was superimposed on us. You understand? And so this is why teaching sensitive matters like Aqidah, a belief system, is who you are. What are you as an individual except a person that is a manifestation of beliefs and values? What are you? If you are not, what are you as a human being? The core of who you are is a system of beliefs and values. You understand? That's who I am. If you get down, you peel back all the layers. When you peel back all the layers of who you are as an individual, the only thing that is really left of you is a system of beliefs and values. That's who you are. So it's a very sensitive topic, a very sensitive subject to teach people what to believe and how to believe. You understand? Basically, when you're teaching people Aqidah, belief, right? Theology, Islamic theology 101, you're teaching people what to believe and how to believe it and how that belief should manifest in the way that they interact with God and the way that they interact with the world around them. You understand? That is a very sensitive topic. So we have all of these brothers returning home to their respective environments, grabbing a book on Aqidah and just rushing to the masjid to teach people Aqidah. Basically, what you're doing is you're teaching people what to believe about Islam, how to believe in these things, and how those beliefs will manifest in their world and how they interact with the world and how they interact with God. That's a very sensitive matter, man. And that ain't for everybody. Right. Thank you for Abu Musa for that. Thank you for that hadith, Abu Musa, mashallah. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you are essentially teaching people what to believe. How do you teach somebody what to believe? How do you teach somebody how to believe? And you're doing it in a forceful way. You have to believe in this. You have to believe in that. You have to believe in this. You have to believe. And if you don't somehow believe in this, not because it's not believable, but because maybe the way that you're teaching it is not believable. You don't make sense to me. It's not that I don't believe in it, because if it was explained to me correctly, I would understand, because the belief system of Islam is aligned with the fitrah, your natural inclination to believe in God. You understand? Your natural inclination to believe in God, everything in Islam is aligned with that. It just takes the right person to teach it to you in the right way, in the right manner. So what happens is students of knowledge will teach Aqidah, right? And they'll teach it in a very, a very formal way. You know, you have to believe in this. You have to believe in this. And the next belief system is this. And the next thing that we believe in, the Aqidah, the next thing that we believe in is we believe in the names and attributes of Allah. And you're like, okay, all right, explain that to me. And then when it's like you ask the person for more explanation, right, then you'll find a lot of students of knowledge, they do what preachers used to do to us in church. They say, oh, you don't believe. Allah doesn't want good for you. Allah is leading you astray. Or, you need to go make tawbah. Something is wrong with your heart that you're not digesting this information. I'm giving you clear textual evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah. MashaAllah. So because you're giving me clear evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah, I'm supposed to automatically understand you? Is that so? What you're doing is you're taking the onus, you're taking the burden of responsibility off of yourself, and you're putting it on the person. You're taking the responsibility of teaching off of you and placing it on the person in front of you. So somehow it's their fault that they don't understand, and on top of them not understanding, they are deviant for not understanding, right? because your teaching is so sublime, so profound, so extraordinary. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. You can sit in front of anybody and say the same thing and they would just get it. They would get it. Man, subhanallah al-azim, man. I'm just flabbergasted, man. You understand? I'm just amazed at our audacity. I'm amazed at our audacity, our ignorance, and our insensitivity to teaching something that is so sensitive. So sensitive, man. I mean, and I mean, like, it only comes with maturity. I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys about this had I not gone through some maturing myself, because 15 years ago, if I opened up a book of Aqidah and tried to teach a book of Aqidah, I would have taught it in the same manner. In the same manner that I'm describing to you right now, because I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. And I really think that students of knowledge, before they come home and begin teaching, if they are not in tune with that social side of Islam, that they really need to go take a course in sociology. Absolutely. I'm guilty of the same thing. 15 years ago, if I taught Usul al-Thalatha or any other small text, Aqidah Wasatiyah, if I taught any small text 15 years ago, and for those of you who know me, you know that I taught Aqidah in the same manner, the same exact manner. Just insensitive. I'm just going to come out here. I'm going to feed you this belief system. And if you don't believe it, then you're somehow a deviant. Something is inherently wrong with you. And you need to go find yourself. You need to go find your religion. Nothing wrong with me, because I got this directly from the shuyukh. I got this directly from the scholars, right? I got a stamp. I've been certified. I got a degree from the university. I got a scholar to sign off to say, MashaAllah, tabarakallah. And I don't care what scholar signs off on your personality, your character, what the Islamic University says about who you are. That does not validate whether or not you are effective, the ability to be effective and to affect change within people. No one can certify that. You know what certifies that? After you teach, look at the people who say they follow you, say they follow your teaching, and how they are being affected by your teaching. That is what validates that. Look at the people who say that they follow you. So when people say, oh, I don't take from Shadeed Muhammad, I'm actually glad you don't take from Shadeed Muhammad, because you would be an embarrassment to my teaching. I'm glad you don't take from Shadeed Muhammad, because if you sell drugs, if you roll your pants above your ankles, and that's the best that you can offer as a Muslim, and you say you take from me, then I am embarrassed as your teacher. You understand? Don't do me no favors. Don't say, oh, we don't take from him. You understand? You saying that you don't take from Shadeed Muhammad, you're actually doing me a favor. You're allowing me to save face, because if I was your teacher and that is the way that you are manifesting my teaching, then there's something inherently wrong with me as a teacher. Understand? So you're not doing me a favor by saying I don't take from Shadeed Muhammad. You're actually doing me a favor. You're actually doing me a favor, because I wouldn't want someone like you, all right, to be associated with me. So I'm going to get to how do you teach without the checkbox mentality. I'm going to get to that. All right. I mean, like, I'm okay with the fact that you don't take from Shadeed Muhammad. I'm good, because whoever you do take from, your manifestation of their teaching, they should be embarrassed. They should be embarrassed to be your teacher. I want people who say they take from Shadeed Muhammad, I want them to be the best of people. You understand? The best of people. So when a person says, yeah, I listen to Shadeed Muhammad, yeah, I benefit from the brother, but then when you look at that person's behavior, you look at their character, that is a reflection of who I am as a teacher. Not that the best that you can offer is your pants rolled up above your ankle and a thobe and a beard on. And, you show up at the masjid at every lecture, and that's the best that you can offer as a Muslim. And you say, I take from this person, or I listen to this person, I rock with that person. I mean, like, cool. That's good, because from the outward, from what it looks like, is the only thing that you're getting from your teaching anything is superficiality anyway. You're just superficial. You got it all figured out on the outside. You know what I mean? You got it all figured out on the outside. And if that's what you are gaining from the person that you are learning from, then, more power to you. That's not what I'm into. I'm not teaching people to be superficially Muslim. You understand? I'm not teaching people to be superficially Muslim. I'm teaching people to infuse the teachings of Islam within their life practices. That's what I'm teaching. Okay, so the next thing that we should focus on as parents dealing with our children is to mold and shape their belief system. All right? Our belief system, all right? Our belief system is connected to our core values, right? I tell brothers and sisters all the time, they say, okay, well, how do I know if I select the right spouse? How do I know if I got the right spouse? Right? You know that you've selected the right spouse when your spouse, everything about your spouse is aligned with your values. The way that he talks to you, the way she talks to you, the way that they interact with you, the way that they believe, the way they see the world. All of these things are aligned with your value system. Your value system is what you lead with when you're making a decision for anything that is moral or spiritual. You understand? Your value system is your navigation. When it comes to what job should you take, that all depends on your value system. If you are a type of person that is faith-centered, meaning faith is at the core or at the center of your world, you're a faith-centered person, then that means that you lead with your value system. Meaning, every choice, every decision that you make is based upon your religion. So where you work is based upon your religion. Who you choose as a spouse is based on your religion. What masjid you go to. People always ask, oh, I want to move to Philadelphia, or I want to move to this city. What masjid should I go to? That is totally based upon your value system. What are at the top of your value priorities? What are at the top of your priorities in terms of your values, your morals? All right, if you're a moral person, a person that puts morality at the core and at the forefront, you're not going to move to a community where there's a lot of immorality going on. Brothers marrying sisters, divorcing them, brothers giving sisters herpes and all types of STDs. You're not going to move into a community like that, right? You're not going to move into a community like that because morality is at the top of your value system. So you place heavy emphasis on your morals and your values, and you lead with that. So you're going to look for a community that is more aligned with your value system. You understand? You understand? You guys, I hope you guys are paying attention. So a lot of times when people ask me questions, sometimes they get frustrating, you know what I mean? Or lusting over children. Absolutely. You have communities where you move into, you marry a brother and, he's sleeping with your daughter while you off at work. And I mean, and these things go on in these communities. It's okay. It's acceptable behavior because they never say anything about it. They don't chastise, reprimand. They don't verbally speak out. There's no cry, no public cry, outcry, nothing. You understand? So when you lead with your value system, right, your morals, they now become the filter through which you make all your decisions. And your value system is based upon your belief system. Your values and your beliefs go hand in hand. The value system and your belief system go hand in hand. So a lot of times when people ask me questions and I give them these type of responses, they're not used to hearing people respond like this. So it's just like, oh, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. How am I arrogant? You asked me, what community should I move into? I said, I cannot make that decision for you because usually we're used to, as a Muslim community, we're used to being fed, directives. Oh, do this, do that. We're used to the brainwashing mentality, so we automatically assume that a person of knowledge knows better than we do. So we don't lead with common sense. We lead with, I'm ignorant, please tell me what to do. That's what we do. Whether we asking for marital advice, it doesn't matter what we do. In the Islamic community, for the most part, we function like sheeple. We are sheeple. We're sheep. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. Brother Imam, I want to move to Philadelphia. I want to move to New Jersey. Can you tell me which community I should look into? It's just like, what do you mean tell you what community you should move to? You moving to a community is predicated on your value system. What are your values? And when you say that to a person, they're looking at you like, what? It's like, what are your values? What is your value system? What do you value? What's important to you? What's important to you? And that will determine where you move. Your value system determines where you live, where you work, who you marry, what mosque you attend, what masjid you attend. It's all predicated on your value system. The things that you consider important to you at the top of your priorities. You know what I mean? All right, so we should teach our children a belief system. And our belief system is connected to our core values as Muslims. Much of what is being lost today through our complete integration into this system. All right, this world that we live in, this society that we live in. Most of our children are spending so much time trying to see where they fit in this world that they don't even have a value system. Many of our children don't even have a value system. They don't have a belief system through which they navigate the world. They just see the world in front of them and they just want to be a part of it. And they'll do whatever it takes to be a part of it. And that's a problem with, millennials. No disrespect to millennials, but millennials are some of the most opportunistic people. The most opportunistic generation of American children are millennials, because they don't function with a solid set of belief system. It's like whatever comes their way, whatever opportunity presents itself, right? And this is where this lack of loyalty, the lack of being loyal, and all of these things that go on today, it's amongst millennials. They don't have any loyalty. Millennials don't have any loyalty. Their loyalty is to their opportunities. Whatever opportunity presents itself, I'm not going to pass this opportunity up. So you'll cut this person off. You'll cut that person off. You'll cut that person off to get to the opportunity. Your loyalty is rooted in the opportunities that present themselves. You graduate with a degree. All right. You're taught a system of beliefs based upon that degree, connected to that degree. And you'll forsake all of that if the right job presents itself. It's just like, didn't you go to school? Didn't you graduate with a degree in this and that? You understand? Rat race world. There you go. And that's because they don't have a belief system. They don't have a solid value system. That's millennials in a nutshell. Rigid entrepreneurship. Very good, Maysoon. MashaAllah. Sociopathic. That's even better. Sociopaths. America, this generation of millennial is filled with sociopaths. Very good. Awesome, Brother Charles. MashaAllah. You hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. We are living in a society filled with sociopaths. Absolutely. All right. And unfortunately, sad enough, Muslim children as well, included in that. Very egotistical, very narcissistic, and sociopathic. Absolutely. All right. So let me just go and say, in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, we should teach our children a belief system, the belief system of Islam. All right. Teach our children the belief system of Islam, and our belief system is connected to our core values. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Ibrahim, with قال إبراهيم رب اجعل هذا البلد آمنا وجنوبني وبني أن نعبد الأصنام ربي إنهن أضللن كثيرا من الناس. That remember when Ibrahim, he left Hajar and his son Ismail in the valley of Mecca, right? And he turned after he left his family and he made dua. And he said, the first thing he said was, oh my Lord, I left my family in the valley of Mecca with pretty much nothing. He said, but keep my family. وَجُنُوبِنِي وَبَنِيَّ أَن نَعْبُدَ الْأَصْنَامِ. Keep me and my children from worshiping idols. Keep me and my children from worshiping idols. This is Ibrahim, a father whose fear is that leaving his wife and child in the valley of Mecca, that somehow their beliefs would be influenced by the beliefs of idolatry. So he's supplicating to God to protect him and his children from worshiping idols. And notice he led with himself. وَجْنُبْنِي وَبَنِيَّ. Keep me and my children free from worshiping idols. All right, from idolatry in all of its manifestations, because idolatry is alive and well today. Make no mistake. Idolatry is alive and well today in many different forms and manifestations. But Ibrahim alayhi salam, although being a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can never consider yourself free or exempt from going astray or falling victim to idolatry. You can never consider yourself exempt from, falling into idolatry. Ibrahim alayhi salam, the close companion of God, he said, Ijnubni wa baniya an na'bud al-asnam. Keep me and my children. Here again, the supplication for the child or for the children. Keep me and my children from worshiping idols. Now, when we think about worshiping idols, when we hear worshiping idols, we usually associate this with someone prostrating to an idol in front of them. All right? Prostrating to an idol in front of them. All right? But when we think about this in a modern context, right? A modern context. Oh Allah, keep me and my children free from idolatry or worshiping idols. And an idol can be your ego. Something as subtle as your ego can become your idol. And many of us have many idols in our closets. We have huge egos that we obey, that direct everything. You understand? Thinking you are the boss, you determine your fate. Absolutely. This is you worshiping that idol. Your ego has now become your idol. And Allahu Musta'an, in today's time, we have so many things that have built up our ego. Just the fact that we live in America, we have first world privileges. We have huge egos. We have huge egos. Because, and I mean like everybody's an entrepreneur now. Nobody needs anybody now. We have huge egos. I don't need you. I can just block you. I can just delete you from my life because I don't need you, right? Nobody needs anybody, and nothing is nobody's fault, right? Man, we are a sick generation of people. To be the most technologically advanced society in the world, we are the most antiquated people in the world. We are so far behind, man, in the way that we interact with the world. It's ridiculous, man. But we have huge egos, man, and our egos are our idols. Keep us free from idolatry and all of its manifestation. Selling your soul, right? As we talked about being opportunistic, all right? Millennials need to understand being an opportunist is akin to being an idolater. Being an opportunist is akin to being an idolater. How? Because you will sell your soul given the right opportunity. You understand? You will sell your soul given the right opportunity. Yeah. And this is especially true if you don't have a solid foundation, a solid belief system, a solid value system that is rooted in core beliefs. The Prophet ﷺ, right? The Prophet ﷺ, didn't he tell us that there will come a time where things will be so obscure, right? and a man will sell his religion for a portion of this world. He said that there will come a time where a man will go to sleep a believer and wake up a disbeliever, and go to sleep a disbeliever and wake up a believer. Yubi'u dinahu bi'ardin min ad-dunya. He will sell his religion for a share of this world. Opportunists. Opportunists. Anytime you sell your religion, and what does he mean when you say you sell your religion? Meaning you sell your core values, your belief system for a share of this world. Opportunists. So being an opportunist is akin to being an idolater. You understand? Being an opportunist is akin to being an idolater because you'll sell your soul for the right opportunity. Make no mistake about that, man. Very dangerous. Man, all of this stuff is connected, man. The Prophet ﷺ was not just saying, giving us some abstract concepts that, we can't relate or connect or interconnect with the world that we live in. Everything he said is connected. Everything. It's all connected. It just takes the right person to start making the connections. All right. But as I said in a post on my Twitter page the other day, that when you live on an island by yourself, you can't describe the world to everybody. Meaning when you have limited experiences, limited worldview, limited, experiences in life, it's only but so far you can go in your teaching of others. You can't really go. So when you live in a bubble, right? And I was saying that more so in terms of the Salafis. When you live in a bubble, how in the world can you teach the world about the world? And you live in a bubble. When you live on an island by yourself, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't teach others about the world because you have very limited, your experiences are very limited. So, teaching, the first thing, if you notice, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said, keep me and my children free from worshiping idols. Idolatry, all right, or staying away from idolatry is an extension of the natural inclination or the predisposition of the child to believe in one God. We as Muslims, we believe that every child was born with a predisposition. Every child is born predisposed to a belief in God. No child is born into this world, right, except that they have a predisposition to believe in God. And it's their parents, their immediate environment, as well as their outside environment that all influence that fitrah, all influence that predisposition. You're predisposed as a human being. God created you, brought you into this world, and gave you a predisposition, an inclination towards him. All right. But as a child, you're ignorant of the world around you, let alone ignorant of God. All right. So it is your immediate environment, meaning starting with your parents and what's in the home, as we talked about with culture, teaching your children edda. But it's your immediate environment as well as the environment at large around you that helps to formulate or to take away that natural inclination or to disrupt that disposition, that predisposition to believe in God. It's almost like God gave us a biological wiring. Biologically, he wired us to believe in him and then charged the parents with the responsibility of nurturing that belief. You understand? This is why it's important for parents to teach their children to have a correct belief system. To have a belief system which is where their values will be rooted in. And this is why you have some Muslim children that they might ditch school, they might smoke a blunt or a cigarette or whatever, but there's a limit to how far they will go. All right, so when they say, come on, let's go rob this person, come on, let's go sleep with this person, the person that has a strong faith system, they're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to do that. And they stand firm on that. They're not going to budge on it. All right, so having a belief system, all right, and having values rooted in that belief system doesn't mean that your child is not going to commit sin. Doesn't mean that, shaitan is not going to get the best of your child here or there, right? They're going to be tested. All right. And they may, in fact, fail the test here and there. But shaitan will not be able to take them to a certain point. You understand? They will not go past a certain point. They'll dabble in this, they'll dabble in that, and eventually their conscience will kill them, and they will eventually stop, right? Because the believer, the person who has a strong belief system, he also has a conscience. She also has a conscience. You understand? Because you can't have a belief system, all right, and values rooted in a belief system and not have a conscience. It doesn't work like that. If you have a belief system, you have a conscience. You understand? You have a belief system. People who don't have a conscience don't believe in anything. You understand? You see how that works? A person who does not have a conscience, you see people who don't have a conscience, they don't believe in anything. You don't find a person who functions in the world without a conscience talking about they believe in God and they have this relationship with God. They don't function like people who have a relationship with God. Doesn't mean that they don't sin. They sin. They commit sin. They do things that are wrong, but they sin with a conscience. You understand? A nafs al-lawama. Very good, Abu Salma. They function with a conscience. It doesn't mean that they don't commit sin. They commit sin because some people associate being religious with the fact that you don't commit sin. That's not what being religious is about. That's not what being spiritual is about. Being spiritual doesn't mean that you don't sin. You understand? So, yes, you can get taken advantage of, but even when you sin with a conscience, meaning it eats away at you. The Prophet ﷺ, he said the difference between a hypocrite and a believer is that when a believer sins, he sees it like a ton of bricks, a boulder getting ready to drop on him. That's a conscience. You understand? The Prophet ﷺ, it's almost like his language. We got to decode his language in our time to make it relevant, to make it, resonate with us, because we live in a different culture. We live in a different era, different time. So there's so many different layers or barriers between us and the Prophet ﷺ. All right. So we got to kind of decode his language and make it relevant to where we are. You understand? So when the Prophet ﷺ, he used metaphors, he talked metaphorically. He said that the believer, the difference between a believer and a hypocrite is that the believer sees his sins like a boulder getting ready to fall on top of him. That's metaphorical for the person having a conscience, that he sins, but he sins with a conscience. You understand? Meaning he does something wrong, and he feels bad. There's a level of shame there, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to commit sin. You're going to commit sin. All right? So we need to remove this idea from our minds that being religious or being righteous somehow means you don't commit any sin. No, it means you commit sin, but you commit sin with a conscience. And as long as that conscience is there, eventually you're going to abandon the sin. You're not going to commit the sin but for so long. And this is why brothers and sisters, they have boyfriends and girlfriends, and then they show up at the masjid and they're like, all right, that's enough. We can't do this anymore, right? We can't do this anymore. We need to get married or we need to separate. On Jumu'ah, Friday, I had a couple walk into my office and said, we are tired of sinning. We need to get married right now. And I said, I'll marry y'all right now, right before Jumu'ah, if that's what it takes. You understand? If that's what it takes, because they were sinning with a conscience. You understand? Doesn't mean that they're not going to commit sin. It just means that when they sin, their conscience is going to eat away at them. And you become hyper aware of what you're doing to your relationship with God. And eventually you stop. He said, but the hypocrite, when he sins, it's like a fly. He said, but when the hypocrite sins, it's like a fly that lands on his nose and he does like this. He just wipes it away. Meaning that is akin or next to not caring. You understand? They don't care. They commit sin. They don't care. There's no conscience there. All right? And the hypocrite that he was talking about here is a hypocrite in terms of belief, meaning the person doesn't need to, he doesn't believe in anything. Here again, a person who does not believe in anything does not function in the world with a conscience. You understand? A person who doesn't believe, doesn't have values that are rooted in some type of belief system, they don't function in the world with a conscience. A hypocrite is someone who actually doesn't believe in anything. And the believer is someone who has a value system rooted in beliefs, and they function with a conscience. All right, so believing in God is something that we are predisposed to. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma min mawludin illa yuladu ala al-fitra fa abawahu yuhawidanihi aw yunasiranihi aw yumajjisanihi." That there's no child that is born except that the child is born on the fitra. The fitra meaning a predisposition to believe in God. He said, but it is his parents that either make him a Jew, a Christian, or a Magian, a fire worshiper, an idolater. Meaning that it is his immediate environment that either helps to nurture that predisposition, or to disrupt and disconnect him from that predisposition. All right? So as parents, the Prophet ﷺ said, it is his parents that either make him a Jew, a Christian, or an idolater. And notice he didn't say it is his parents that make him a Muslim, right? Did you pay attention to that in the hadith? He said that every child is born on the fitrah, a predisposition to believe, predisposed to belief in God. He said, and it is his parents that either make him a Jew, a Christian, or a Magian, or a fire worshiper, an idolater. He didn't say it is his parents that make him a Muslim. Why? Because he's already born with the predisposition of a Muslim. Not that he is born as a Muslim. We are not born Muslim. Becoming Muslim is a conscious decision that one makes to manifest or to profess their belief in one God. That's a conscious decision. Evidenced by the fact that children are not accountable and do not have to pray or fast until they reach the age of what? Until they reach the age of what? Until they reach the age of discernment, which is between 7, 8 years old. All right? Salat becomes an obligation on the child, or salat is the child is encouraged to pray and fast and do all the other rituals of Islam once they reach the age of discernment. And they are accountable for it when they reach the age of puberty. You understand? Because discernment, now you are making a conscious decision to do something. You understand? You can discern between Dhuhr and Asr, and you make a conscious decision. So this whole idea that we are born Muslim, we're not born Muslim. We're born predisposed to the belief of Islam, which is monotheism. That's what we are born predisposed to, the belief of monotheism, the belief in one God. We're not born Muslim because even in the practices of Islam, the rituals of Islam, it is not accepted from the child until the child can reach the age of discernment, meaning till they are clear about what they are doing. They make a conscious decision to do or not do. You understand? Hope we dispel this whole idea that we're all born Muslim. We're not born Muslim. And if you can bring me a verse from the Quran or a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that affirms that, then until then, I stand clear on the fact that we are not born Muslim. Okay. So it is the parent's responsibility to ensure that this predisposition does not change, that the child does not deviate from this predisposition. And that is the responsibility of the parents, to nurture it with correct knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how they should interact with the world. And our beliefs affect our actions and behaviors, which is why we believe that faith and action go hand in hand. And Ibrahim alayhi salam left this legacy of monotheism amongst his progeny, his children, his grandchildren. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَوَصَّى بِهَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَوَصَّى بِهَا وَوَصَّى بِهَا بَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوبَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اسْتَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. And as Allah mentions in another ayah, وَجَعَلَهَا كَلِمَةً بَاقِيَةً فِي عَقِبِهِ لَعَلَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِ يَرْجِعُونَ. And we made this as an everlasting word, meaning everlasting word, a kalimatu baqiya in the Quran, everlasting word meaning la ilaha illallah. This concept of monotheism, right? This concept of monotheism, Allah said that Ibrahim left this as a legacy, right? Ibrahim left this as a legacy amongst his progeny, right? Amongst his progeny, and that was the legacy was la ilaha illallah, meaning monotheism. And he said, وَوَصَّى بِهَا, and he imparted this concept on to his children. وَبَنِيهِ وَيَعْقُوب, he imparted this concept of monotheism onto his children, meaning Ishaq and Ismail. وَيَعْقُوب, and his grandchild. إِنَّ اللَّهَ اسْتَفَى لَكُمُ الدِّينَ, indeed God has chosen for you your religion. فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ, so do not die except in a state of submission to God, meaning Islam. Do not die as Muslims. So we believe that every prophet and every messenger, they taught the same religion of Islam, meaning submission to God. Allah says in Surah 43, Ayah 28, وَجَعَلَهَا كَلِمَةً بَاقِيَةً, and we made this an everlasting word, فِي عَقِبِهِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, so that perhaps they would find their way back to it. Pay attention. Pay attention. He said that Ibrahim left the concept of monotheism, la ilaha illallah, as an everlasting word amongst his progeny, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, so that perhaps they could return back to it. Meaning, once you give the child the foundational belief system of Islam, even if they deviate from Islam, they will find their way back to it because they have a solid foundation. Many Muslim children have left Islam and found their way back. Many Muslim children have deviated from Islam, and while we are growing gray hairs, right? While we as parents are growing gray hairs, wondering when this child is going to come back to Islam, the child eventually comes back because they had a solid foundation. Understand? They will find their way back. Allah says in the Quran, in this ayah, pay attention to the Quran. Surah number 43, ayah 28. Allah says, وَجَعَلَهَا كَلِمَةً بَاقِيَةً, and Ibrahim made this concept, La ilaha illallah, kalimatul baqiyah, made it an everlasting concept amongst his progeny, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, so perhaps they would find their way back to it. But you have to, as parents, give your children the belief system. You got to give it to them. And eventually they will find their way back to it. Bi-idhnillah, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they'll find their way back. Because it is rooted, it is a part of them. Your belief system is a part of who you are. And even if shaitan gets you to deviate for a little bit here or there, cool, he's going to get that off. But he'll never get you to turn on your faith. He'll never get you to turn away from Islam. He'll get you to sin and be disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he'll never get you to turn on God. You understand? And for us as parents, we have to leave room that, perhaps shaitan may, catch my child vulnerable. But if I know that I gave them a solid foundation, a solid belief system, perhaps they will find their way back to it. And the core of our belief system is monotheism, believing that there's only one God worthy of worship, and I am put here to serve that creator. For no other purpose are we here. We're here solely to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to serve God. That's it. And no matter how much I get distracted or deviated from that initial goal, eventually you will find your way back to that. You understand? You find your way back to that. So pay attention to that. And we know many Muslim children who have left Islam who, subhanAllah, found their way back. And the reason why they found their way back is, number one, they were given a solid foundation. Think about any Muslim child who left Islam and came back to Islam. They had a solid foundation, man. Right? Absolutely. Mason, absolutely. The Quran, very profound. Very profound. Think about any Muslim child who left Islam. And when I say left Islam, I don't mean that they apostated. I mean, maybe they stopped praying, they stopped practicing, right? And eventually they found their way back to Islam. I guarantee you that that child had some level of belief system that was given to them in their childhood. They knew the difference. They were sinning with a conscience. No matter how bad we saw them drinking, we saw them partying, we saw them, doing whatever. But they were sinning with a conscience. They weren't just partying and enjoying, because if you have a conscience, you can't really enjoy, right? You can't really enjoy sin. It's momentary. It's momentary, right? Temporary. But you don't get the long-term effects of sin like a person who functions without a conscience, because eventually the conscience kick in and you start to beat yourself up, and remorse kicks in, and regret, and all of those things, those emotions kick in, and they sully the enjoyment. These emotions sully the enjoyment. So you can't really enjoy it. So you partied last night, but you woke up this morning, you got a headache, you feel bad, you miss Fajr, right? You understand? You were sinning and you enjoyed it for the moment, but you woke up with regret, remorse, feeling bad, feeling horrible, feeling like a hypocrite, and all of that just sullied all of what you enjoyed. You understand? You can't really enjoy it. If you have a conscience, as Shakespeare said in Hamlet, thus does consciousness make cowards of us all. Right? When you have a conscience, it makes you a coward. You can't do the things that other people do. Thus does consciousness makes cowards of us all. Right? When you have a conscience, you can't function like everybody. You can't do what everybody else does. You can't. And yes, very good. You start to see lessons in your life as you're trying to enjoy your sinful lifestyle. You start to see the lessons of Allah manifest in your life. And each and every lesson is always calling you back to Islam. Each and every lesson is calling you back to Islam. You find a woman, right? She's engaged with this man, this brother. She's the non-Muslim guy. She's Muslim. She's not praying, not covering, not doing nothing. And then somehow this man converts to Islam. The very thing that she was running away from caught up to her. You understand what I'm saying? The very thing that you run away from catches up to you later on. Right? The more and more you think that you are getting away from Islam, the more and more the things that happen in your life are calling you back to Islam. And that is a sign that Allah wants good for you. Take heed of those signs. That is signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants good for you. All right? So Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, he also left this legacy amongst his children. Allah captured his final advice to his children, a glimpse at the concern of a parent for his family after his demise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَمْ كُنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءَ إِذْ حَضَرَ يَعْقُوبَ الْمَوْتِ إِذْ قَالَ لِبَنِيهِ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِنْ بَعْدِي قَالُوا نَعْبُدُ إِلَهَكَ وَإِلَهَ آبَائِكَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَإِسْحَاقَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. Now, mind you, Yaqub is the grandson of Ibrahim alayhi salam. There's Ibrahim, there's Ishaq, and Yaqub, who was the son of Ishaq. So Yaqub, or Jacob, is the grandson of Ibrahim. And we said that Ibrahim left La ilaha illallah as a concept to dwell, everlasting concept to dwell amongst his progeny. So perhaps they would, if they got lost or deviated from the way, they could find their way back. Because La ilaha illallah, this concept is rooted in the heart, the core, the core of the individual. And as a result of that, you'll always find your way back to it. All right. As long as La ilaha illallah is rooted in the child, even though they may deviate from Islam, they'll find their way back. Inshallah, they'll find their way back. Because you gave them the core, you gave them the foundation, and they'll come back to it, inshallah. He said, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ, that perhaps they may return back to it. Now, his grandson, we're showing you how generationally belief is passed on. And generationally, belief is not passed on when you force people to believe. And you say, you got to believe in this, check. You got to believe in this, check. You got to believe in that, check. And if you don't believe in these things, then you're somehow astray, misguided, deviant, heretic, kafir. And, Islam, God wants nothing to do with you. That's not the way you teach people how to believe. That's not how you impart Aqidah onto people. You understand? It's not how you teach people how to believe. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Yaqub, were you present when Yaqub was on his deathbed and he said to his children, what are you going to worship after me? And the children said, we will worship your God. Pay attention. We will worship your God and the God of your fathers, Ibrahim, Ismail, and Ishaq, meaning your grandfather, your father, and your uncle. You see how the belief system is passed down generation to generation? Yaqub's children, meaning Prophet Yusuf and his brothers, they were all aware of the belief system of their father, belief system of their grandfather, and the belief system of their great-grandfather. You see how Tawheed was generationally passed down? Now, there's a problem with us in our communities because we don't see this generational transition of faith. You understand? I don't know. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a generational transition of faith. I see Islam and faith in Islam stopping at a particular generation. And it's just like it's not progressing. It's not moving on to the next generation. And that's a problem. That is a problem. For those of you that are on Facebook Live, I'm also streaming it live on Periscope. My phone is about to die. I'm 1%. So within the next 5 minutes, this phone is going to cut off. So if you have Periscope, you can go to Periscope. My other phone is charged up pretty good. Inshallah ta'ala. And I'm just about finished. So you're not going to miss much. All right. We're not going to miss much. But when you think about that, we don't see with all of this Aqidah and this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You have every student of knowledge who feels like it is his God-given duty to teach Usul al-Thalatha, Aqidah Wasitiyah, this Aqidah, that Aqidah, this Aqidah book, that Aqidah book, but we don't see that Aqidah, all this Aqidah being, and you have communities that pride themselves on this. We're a Salafi community because we teach Aqidah, the Aqidah of this one and the Aqidah of that one, but we don't see the Aqidah that you are teaching, number one, manifest in the world that the people that you're teaching it to. We don't see it manifesting in the way that they interact with the world. And number two, we don't see this Aqidah transitioning from one generation to the next. So there's either a problem with the Aqidah, which there's not, or there's a problem with the person teaching it and how it is being taught. No implementation whatsoever. We're not even talking about implementation. There's no manifestation of this Aqidah and how, and some of top students of knowledge and you teaching all this Aqidah, but look at your children. Look at how your children interact with the world. Is that an indication that they understand, or are we just handing out theory? We just handing out theory. That's what it's becoming. We got to make it real. It has to be real for people. They have to know, how does this look in real time? This Aqidah, this belief, how do I connect this to the world that I live in? Otherwise, it's irrelevant. It's just bits and pieces, tidbits of information that goes in one ear, out the other. But it transitioned, right? He said, were you present when death came to Yaqub? And he said to his children, what are you going to worship after me? Shows you the concern of the parent. And the children replied with what? We'll worship your God and the God of your forefathers, meaning our grandfather, meaning Ishaq, Ismail, and Ibrahim. We'll worship the God of our grandfather, of our father, grandfather, right, and great-grandfather. Generational transition of Aqidah. It transitioned from one generation to the next. Transcended. Okay, so Facebook Live is... So there was, transitioning this Aqidah, this belief system. It didn't just stop with one generation. It continued on even beyond Prophet Yaqub, and it continued beyond Ibrahim, and he gave that to his children, Ismail and Ishaq, and then they gave it to their children. Ishaq gave it to Yaqub, and now Yaqub is on his deathbed confirming with his children, what are you going to worship after me? All right? And of course, likewise with and likewise Luqman, the wise, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Luqman, and we'll conclude with this one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِبْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. And remember when Luqman said to his son, O my son, do not associate partners with God. Do not associate partners with Allah. Indeed, shirk, indeed, idolatry is the worst type of oppression. And I mean, we can give a lecture on that word just alone, right? It's the worst type of oppression because it's oppression of God. You're denying God his right to be acknowledged as the omnipotent, the only one worthy of worship, the all-powerful, the almighty. You're denying him. This is his right, subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is God's right over you, that as a human being that he created, for you to acknowledge him as the almighty, the all-powerful, the omnipresent, the omnipotent, the all-forgiving, the most merciful, to acknowledge him to the end. That is his right. And by you associating partners with him, you are denying him his right. And that is the greatest form of oppression. But here is Luqman the wise, right? Advising his son with the same belief system. O my son, do not associate partners with Allah. Indeed, shirk is the worst type of oppression. And even the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they used to teach their children the same thing. Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, كان السلف يعلمون أبناءهم حب أبي بكر وعمر كما كانوا يعلمونهم سورة من القرآن. That Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Salaf, the scholars of the past, they used to teach the Sahaba, they used to teach their children to love Abu Bakr and Umar, just as they would teach their children a surah from the Quran. How is teaching your children to love Abu Bakr and Umar, how is that teaching them Aqidah? How is that teaching them a belief system? Because we believe that the best of this ummah after the Prophet ﷺ was Abu Bakr and Umar. And obviously, this is juxtaposed to the Shia, those who claim that Abu Bakr and Umar and many of the Khawarij who revolted against the Sahaba and declared many of them heretics and kuffar, declared them to be disbelievers. This is juxtaposed to what they believe. So actually teaching your children to love Abu Bakr and Umar is actually teaching them part of our belief system. And they're teaching them with love. You notice? He didn't say, if you don't believe that Abu Bakr is the best of this ummah, then you're a disbeliever. If you don't believe that Umar is the best after Abu Bakr, then you're a disbeliever. He said they used to teach them to love Abu Bakr and Umar. And when you teach a child to love someone, all right, because of their status in Islam, when someone comes and disparages them, someone comes and disrespects them, someone comes and says something negative about them, they're automatically going to defend them. And you don't have to threaten the person. You have to see Abu Bakr as this. You have to see Umar as this. And if you don't see them like this, then you're somehow astray, or you're a deviant, or you're lumped in the category with this person or that person. You don't have to do that. That's not the most effective way of teaching someone a belief system. And it said that they used to teach them to love Abu Bakr and Umar, because when you teach a child to love someone or something, they're just naturally going to defend them and protect them against anyone who tries to disparage them. Naturally. That comes with the territory. This is what I wanted to present, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I'll turn it off, and I'm going to open up the Facebook Live, because we have more people on Facebook Live than we did on Periscope. So if you're on Periscope and you have Facebook, you can go to my Facebook page, Shadeed Muhammad, /Rawdah admin, RAWDAH admin. And inshallah, you should see it when I pull up the Facebook Live, inshallah. Shukran, jazakumullahu khairan, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa salama tasliman kathira, wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.